I always thought I knew my wife better than anyone. After 15 years of marriage, you get used to the little things. The way she tucks her hair behind her ear when she's nervous, the soft hum she makes when she's focused, even the way her smile changes depending on who she's talking to. But that night, standing in the middle of a crowded restaurant, I realized there were still parts of her I didn't know. Parts that chilled me the moment they slipped into the open. We had gone out for what I thought would be a quiet evening. Just the two of us, no kids, no work calls interrupting. The kind of night where you try to remember what life felt like before the chaos. She looked beautiful in that soft blue dress, the one she only wears on special occasions. Her laughter felt lighter than it had in weeks, and I caught myself thinking, maybe we're finally getting back on track. Then it happened. As we were waiting for our table, a man walked in. I noticed him only because she noticed him first. Her whole body shifted, shoulders tightening, her breath catching for half a second. And then came the smile. Not just any smile. It wasn't the polite smile she gives strangers, or the forced one she wears at work. This one was softer, almost intimate, like a memory lived behind it. I froze. The man hadn't seen us yet. He was busy talking to the hostess, his voice low and easy, like he owned the room without trying. But I couldn't take my eyes off my wife. The way she looked at him, it wasn't normal. It wasn't casual. It was like watching her slip into another version of herself, one I didn't recognize. And then, as if the air wasn't already tight enough around me, she whispered something. Barely audible, but I caught it. His name. She said it like it belonged to her. Like it had been sitting on her tongue, waiting for the right moment to escape. I didn't recognize the name. I wanted to ask her right then, but my mouth went dry. My heart thudded against my ribs, and for a second, I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. All the years we had built together, all the secrets we thought we'd already shared, suddenly they didn't feel like enough. Because clearly, there was something else. Something she hadn't told me. The man finally turned. His eyes swept across the room, and in that instant, I knew he felt it too. That pull. He noticed her, and his face shifted in a way that made my stomach knot. Not shock, not surprise, more like recognition. My wife's hand slipped into mine, but it didn't comfort me. If anything, it only deepened the questions racing through my head. Who was this man? Why did she know him? And why did she say his name like that, like it was more than just a name? I didn't know it yet, but everything about my life was about to change. We met in college, when life was still simple, and the biggest problem we had was whether we could afford late-night pizza. She was the kind of woman who didn't just light up a room. She made you forget there even was a room. I remember thinking back then, if I can get her to laugh at my stupid jokes, maybe I've got a chance. Somehow, against all odds, I did. Years passed, and life built itself around us. Careers, bills, our kids running through the hallways with sticky hands, and endless questions. We weren't perfect, far from it. There were arguments about money, nights we fell asleep without saying goodnight, mornings when exhaustion spoke louder than love. But through it all, I believed one thing. She was mine, and I was hers. That kind of bond, I thought, was unbreakable. So why, in that crowded restaurant, did I suddenly feel like I didn't know her at all? On the surface, she'd been the same woman I married. Organized, caring, stubborn in the small ways that made her human. But looking back now, there had been small cracks forming, details I'd brushed aside. The late nights at work she never wanted to talk about. The way she'd sometimes stare at her phone before locking it quickly when I entered the room. The faint scent of perfume that didn't feel like hers. I told myself not to overthink. That's what long marriages do to you. You start inventing problems when really, you're just tired. But tonight wasn't invention. Tonight, it was staring me right in the face. She kept glancing toward the stranger, even as she tried to play it off. Her fingers traced circles on the tablecloth while we waited to be seated. She laughed at things I said that weren't even funny, like she was trying too hard to distract me, or herself. The man eventually took a seat across the room, alone. But that didn't matter. Every few minutes, I caught her eyes flickering in his direction. Each time, my chest grew tighter. I wanted to ask her directly, but the words stuck in my throat. How do you even begin? Hey honey, why did you smile at that man like you shared a lifetime with him? It sounded absurd in my head, and yet, the evidence was right there. Our server came, took our order, and left. She picked at the bread basket, quiet, her mind somewhere else. And that was when it hit me. This wasn't just chance. This man wasn't just some stranger who happened to walk in at the same time. Something connected them. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face, searching for any crack in the mask she was wearing. And for a split second, I saw it, the flicker of guilt in her eyes before she looked away. I didn't know the story yet, but I knew this. Whatever tied her to him was bigger than she wanted me to believe. And the more she tried to hide it, the more certain I became that the truth, when it finally came out, would not leave us the same. The waiter set down our plates, but neither of us seemed hungry. She moved food around with her fork, forcing small bites, while my eyes kept drifting toward the man across the room. He hadn't noticed me staring. At least, I hoped he hadn't. But every time my wife shifted in her chair, every time her eyes wandered in his direction, I felt a sharp sting in my chest. I tried to start a normal conversation. Work, the kids, even that leaky faucet in the kitchen. But her answers were short, distracted, almost rehearsed. She was present, but not with me. It felt like I was competing with the silence between us, and worse, it felt like I was losing. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I leaned closer, my voice low. Do you know him? Her fork froze midair. For a split second, her face betrayed something. Fear, recognition, I couldn't tell which. Then she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Who? She asked, too casually. I didn't answer right away. I just tilted my head slightly toward the man. He was sipping a glass of wine, his gaze steady, calm, like he had all the time in the world. She looked down, chewing slowly, as though stalling for time. No, I don't, she finally said, but her voice cracked in the middle of the sentence. The denial didn't convince me. In fact, it only deepened the pit forming in my stomach. I wanted to believe her, wanted to accept the answer and move on, but my instincts screamed otherwise. Why would she say his name earlier? Why would she smile that way? I caught the man looking in our direction then. Not just a passing glance. No, it was something heavier, something deliberate. His eyes didn't leave hers, and she quickly dropped her gaze to her lap, pretending to adjust her napkin. It was in that moment I realized I was no longer imagining things. Something was happening right in front of me, something I wasn't meant to notice. I gripped my glass, my pulse pounding. Then why? I whispered, leaning even closer. Did you say his name? She froze. Her hand tightened around her fork, her knuckles pale. For a second, she didn't breathe. And then, without looking at me, she whispered words that made my stomach twist tighter than ever. You wouldn't understand. Her words sat between us like a ticking bomb. You wouldn't understand. I felt my chest tighten, my pulse racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. Try me, I said, my voice quieter than I expected. She didn't answer. She just pressed her lips together, eyes darting toward the man across the room, like she was afraid I'd follow the direction of her gaze. But I already had. He wasn't eating. He wasn't even pretending to be. He just sat there, his posture relaxed, but his eyes, always her way, never leaving her face. It wasn't just recognition. It was possession, and it made my blood run cold. I tried again. Who is he? This time she didn't even attempt a denial. She lowered her fork, hands trembling slightly as she folded her napkin, stalling for time. I could see the storm brewing in her expression, the war between telling me the truth and burying it deeper. But the more she hesitated, the clearer it became. This wasn't small. This wasn't harmless. I need you to trust me, she whispered finally, her voice so faint I had to lean forward to hear it. I almost laughed. Trust? When every part of me screamed that something dangerous was unraveling right in front of us. I followed her eyes again, and this time, the man noticed me. Not just a passing glance, he knew. He knew I was watching him, studying him, questioning everything about him. And instead of looking away, he smiled. Not a friendly smile. A slow, deliberate curve of his lips that sent a chill crawling up my spine. My wife shifted uncomfortably in her chair, almost like she'd seen it too. The restaurant around us faded into background noise. The clinking glasses, the hum of conversation, it all felt distant, muffled, like the three of us were caught in a bubble no one else could see. I leaned closer. Tell me now, I said, firmer this time. Who is he? She closed her eyes briefly, like she was bracing herself for something she couldn't stop. Her hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight, almost desperate. I didn't pull away, though my body screamed too. Before she could speak, the man stood, calm, unhurried, as if he'd been waiting for the right moment. He dropped a few bills on the table, nodded at the waiter, and began walking in our direction. My heart slammed in my chest. Every muscle in my body tensed as I watched him close the distance between us. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at her. Only her. She gripped my hand harder, her breathing uneven now. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking, "don't make a scene." But it was too late for that. The man stopped right beside our table. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, his presence filling the space, his gaze locked on my wife like the rest of the world had disappeared. And then, slowly, deliberately, he spoke her name. The sound of it, familiar on his tongue, intimate, like he had said it 1,000 times before, made my entire world tilt on its axis. I looked at her, waiting for her reaction, waiting for her to deny it, to tell me I was wrong. But she didn't. She just stared back at him, wide-eyed, trembling, her lips parting like she'd been holding her breath all along. And in that suspended moment, before the truth finally broke free, I knew whatever was about to come out of her mouth would change everything. Her lips trembled, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think you'd ever see him again." The man's smile widened at her words, and my stomach dropped. "Again?" I snapped my eyes to her. "What do you mean again?" Before she could answer, the man leaned closer, his tone smooth but heavy with meaning. "She didn't tell you, did she?" "She promised she would." My wife's face drained of color. Her grip on my hand tightened, but I pulled away, heart pounding against my ribs. "Tell me what?" The man's gaze flicked between us, enjoying every second of the tension. Then he said it, calmly, like a casual remark, but the words split me open. "She wasn't just my past, she's my wife too." The room spun. I stared at him, then at her, searching for denial, for outrage, for something to prove he was lying. But her silence was the loudest answer I'd ever heard. Two truths collided in my head. The woman I loved had lived another life I knew nothing about, and that life had just walked back into ours. The air around our table was suffocating, heavy with a silence that no one dared to break. My chest burned with questions, accusations, disbelief, but none of them found their way out. I just stared at her, the woman I thought I knew, as she stared back at him like a ghost had stepped out of her past. Finally, she spoke, her voice cracking under the weight of it. "I married him before you. It was quick, it was messy, and I thought it was over. He disappeared. I never thought I'd see him again." Her confession hit me like a blow. All those years, the promises, the life we'd built, haunted by a secret buried deep enough she believed it would never surface. My hands shook against the table, torn between anger and heartbreak. The man, her other husband, didn't flinch. His eyes stayed locked on her, steady, claiming. "I never left you," he said calmly. "You were taken from me." "Taken?" The words sliced through me. I turned to her, desperate for the truth. She shook her head, tears spilling now. "It's not what you think. He's dangerous." I tried to escape. My pulse hammered, my mind reeling. Nothing made sense. If she had run from him, why did he look at her with such certainty? Why did she look back with such fear? And then came the twist that shattered everything. He reached into his jacket, not for a weapon, but for something far more damning. A worn envelope. He slid it across the table, his smile never fading. "Before you decide who she really is," he said softly, "read this." I hesitated, then tore it open with trembling hands. Inside was a birth certificate. Not mine, not hers, a child's, a name I didn't recognize. But the last name was mine. I froze. My throat closed as I looked at her. Her face went pale, her tears unrelenting. The man leaned back, satisfied. "She didn't just leave me," he said. "She left us." The truth hit harder than anything else. Not only had she hidden a past marriage, she had hidden a child. And in that moment, I realized the stranger wasn't just here for her. He was here for family. The envelope trembled in my hands. My eyes darted between the birth certificate and my wife's face, searching for answers in the silence she couldn't seem to break. The man leaned back, confident, almost smug, while I sat in the middle of a life I no longer recognized. Finally, she spoke, her voice raw, breaking with every word. "I was young. I made mistakes. I thought I could start over and bury the past, but I couldn't bring myself to tell you. Not after everything we built. I thought if I kept it hidden, it would stay hidden. But secrets, they don't die." Her tears came harder, and for the first time, I believed her, not because the words fixed anything, but because of the pain etched into every line of her face. She wasn't lying now. I looked at the man. And what do you want? His eyes narrowed slightly. What I've always wanted. The truth. And for her to face it. The room was still buzzing with voices, laughter, clinking glasses, but at our table, time felt frozen. I stared at the certificate again. A child. A life hidden from me. The betrayal burned deep, but beneath it was something heavier, a sorrow for what I didn't know, for the years stolen by lies. I slid the envelope back across the table. This isn't just about the past anymore. It's about what comes next. For the first time, my wife met my eyes without flinching. I'll tell you everything, she whispered. No more hiding. But please, don't let this moment define us. Let it be where we start over. Her words hung between us. A plea, fragile but real. The man stood slowly, his gaze lingering on her longer than I could stand. Then he gave a small nod, almost respectful, almost resigned. The past always finds its way back, he said quietly, before turning and walking out. I didn't chase him. I didn't move. My wife's hand hovered near mine on the table, trembling, waiting. And after what felt like forever, I placed my hand over hers. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a choice to listen, to face what was broken instead of running from it. As we sat there, I realized something. Love isn't destroyed by the truth. It's destroyed by silence. The lies had cut deep, but now, at least, the silence was gone. That night didn't end with laughter, or romance, or easy answers. It ended with us walking out of that restaurant together, heavy with what had been revealed, unsure of what the future held. But there was something in the weight of her hand in mine that told me one thing. Whatever came next, it would be real. And sometimes, real is the only place you can begin again.